Okay, good afternoon. So we had a very long day today, so we're happy to see the participant. Our participants has so much patience. So we, so the idea of the meeting, it comes from, well, first of all, yesterday, Rien van Genukten told us about the INTERPORE society, the International Society for Porous Mediums, so I will not repeat this part. But anyway, just shortly, that the international, the idea of the society is that it's organization, it's a relatively young organization, so it's established in 2008. It aims to advance and disseminate knowledge for the understanding, description, and modeling of natural and industrial porous media systems. Some time ago, I got a letter from Majid Hassanizadeh, who is a professor in Utrecht University in Holland, and he's the managing director of the INTERPORE. So he suggested to start the activity of INTERPORE in Brazil in the form of a chapter. So we're going to make a chapter, which is a group which helps coordinating the interaction among the people who are working. Those research is related to porous media, well, in a broad multidisciplinary sense, also in the connection to industry, pure academics, etc. So this is what's written here below. Well, the idea of what are we're going to do, of course, we're going to work together with INTERPORE. The idea of the chapter is to create some database of the Brazilian research groups, establish some relation between academia and industry, at least accentuate this relation. I think that one of the main roles of this chapter will be to organize regular national meetings. So like this is workshop is the first one, so which we think to be is the first in a row. Well, we have some history of the meetings related to INTERPORE, which are organized within the mathematical colloquium in Brazil, which happens every 2 years. So it will be next year, and I think we'll keep this special session in this colloquium with a larger focus to the computational and mathematical part of porous media, and every other year we will be fully into interdisciplinary workshop as we did now. Of course, the idea of the chapter that we will promote we will make some research spotlights in the newsletter of INTERPORE, circulate the information about position, meetings, seminars related to porous media, providing input to the annual INTERPORE meetings, attract new members. Of course, we will work for students, also attracting to these meetings. Well, so I think that instead of just talking of what we're going to do, and that we want to talk with make the relation with industry, I think it would be interesting ask directly to the industry what they are thinking about this, and we have good, well, it is in a starting, but we have good relation with between IMPA and the Schlumberger company, who is probably one of the most research-oriented among the oil companies. Actually, we already our 2 new doctors who made PhD, they went to Schlumberger, and 1 postdoc went to Halliburton, I think, just to equilibrate the situation. So I would like to give a word for some short introduction to Helmut Wachanik, who is a research scientist in the research center of Schlumberger in Brazil. So,
okay, thank you very much, Alexei. Well, so Dan had the idea that I could tell you in less than 10 minutes a little bit about the history of Schlumberger. So as he said, Schlumberger is an, I think, I need to say that it has it provides the biggest amount of technological services to the oil field companies. And we have quite a good research infrastructure with 5 research centers, including the Brazil Research and Engineering Center, where I started working in 2011. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what is Schlumberger through its history. So Schlumberger was started with the work of 2 brothers, Konrad Schlumberger and Marcel Schlumberger, French, whose dad decided to found them after finishing the First World War. And here is a famous phrase that his dad sent to his brothers, to Konrad and Marcel, his 2 sons. So it says, "I undertake to supply my sons, Konrad and Marcel, with the necessary funds not to exceed 500,000 francs for research on the use of electrical measurements for the exploration of the subsurface. For the part, my sons agreed not to dilute their efforts by working in other areas. In this undertaking, their interests of scientific research take precedence over financial ones." So the last one is a very interesting phrase, because I think in many ways it keeps being the company's like mindset. So the idea of the electrical measurements is that measuring the resistivity of the rocks, you can infer information about what type of fluids you have, what type of rocks you have. So, in this story, Konrad was a physicist, and Marcel was an engineer. Konrad was professor from École des Mines, and they started working, taking these electrical resistivity measurements in wells in the earth for inferring information about the fluids present in these wells. So in 1920, they started measuring, making geophysical prospecting using these electrical measurements. And they realized that they started making all these surface measurements. So they realized that they would infer a lot of more information if they introduce a cable into the wells, into deep wells, and try to correlate the information in the wells with the surface measurements. And so therefore in 1927, together with Henry Doll, they generated the first electrical well log. So it consists basically of taking these spatially separated measurements along a well for inferring the presence of oil who is almost infinitely resistant to electricity. So basically, Schlumberger grew as a company that used these, it sells the service of taking these measurements in a well, electrical resistivity measurements, and actually a lot of information, I mean, oil prospecting was basically grew on inferring information from these measurements. Whenever you had these really high electric zones, really high electric resistivity zones, you will have oil, and for low resistivity zones, there would be water. This is just a little timeline showing how Schlumberger grew through the years. So now it's a company that provides a huge amount of services, including geophysical prospecting through seismic, et cetera, drilling, cementing, completions, etc. So this is just a little picture showing how this electrical well logging was done. And so there was a truck with a huge amount of cable, and it was just lowered into the well, and the electrical resistivity measurements were taken. This is a short timeline, as I told you. In 1919, the two brothers started working together in Normandy with calculating these electrical resistivity well logs. And this is just the timeline of what happened later. Now, Schlumberger is I think is one of the 100, Fortune 100 companies in the world. And it has, it's very important that almost all the value of these measurements was created in research centers through science, so through physics and engineering. So today we have we have a huge company, 120,000 people. Actually, today is 140,000 because it has been there's been some fusion with other companies. And what is interesting is this number here, that there are 64 research, engineering, manufacturing, and sustaining centers around the world. But 5 of those are research centers, one in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Cambridge, UK, Dhahran, Stavanger, Brazil, here in Rio de Janeiro, and I'm missing one, Moscow, where Alexei was invited to give a talk after a night in a train from St. Petersburg to Moscow. So I grabbed him from the train. He went to SMR, Schlumberger Moscow Research. He gave a talk, and we went to the labs, and we saw some machines that were used for making experiments for core flow, and it was very interesting. And he's so famous in Moscow that everybody was saying, "Oh, how do you bring the Alexei to these research centers?" He's very famous. Everybody was very interested in Alexei. Basically, the research focus in Porous media and reservoir engineering is these days is focused in reservoir characterization, as as everybody here knows. And basically, the company sells. The core business is the petrophysical measurements, like resistivity, electrical resistivity. For other examples are NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance, for measuring permeability, neutron density, and some of the challenges are complex carbonate characterization, the unconventional reservoirs characterization. And with respect to reservoir simulation, are complex processes, as we have seen in these presentations, like multi-phase behavior, upscaling, unstructured grids, from which several projects have been created, like Eclipse software, which was born as a soil remediation software in the UK from Oxford. And now that turned into Intersect, which is a high-performance computing reservoir simulator. And the last thing I want to tell to you is that this Eclipse and Intersect reservoir simulation software has been used as a benchmark for analytical solutions, like the ones we have seen here. And this has been for instance, done in TU Delft by Hamidreza Salimi and, well, other people. So these reservoir simulation softwares can be used by universities through donation of licenses that Schlumberger makes. So if you are interested in this, if your university is interested in using one of these reservoir simulation softwares, then you can talk with us, with Flavio Ferreira, who is with us here, and we can help you get these for using even in scientific publications. So it is very interesting to make use of these engines. So I think that's it. Thank you very much. And we are thank you very much for inviting us to this nice conference.
Well, so now we come to well, it's a formal question, though I think this is a question of election, though it's more rather than I think it's statement of support. So I give a word to Eduardo.
Thanks, Alexei. Thanks, everybody. Now we are following a direction of INTERPORE, and we need to, in order to establish the Brazilian chapter of INTERPORE, we need to make a formal election of the steering committee of these nominated members. Alexei Mailybaev, here from IMPA, the chair, and Álvaro Coutinho from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Now he's in France in a conference, attending a conference, but he agreed to join us in this Brazilian chapter of INTERPORE. Myself from Unicamp, and Adolfo Puemi from State University of North Fluminense, here in Rio. And we need to perform a formal election and to get the support of the audience. So I cordially invite you all to participate of this sort of election. And the question is, for those that do not agree with the nominated member list of the steering committee, please raise your hand. So, as we have the support of the audience, I thank you all for this support, and then I pass the word for Alexei to conduct. Oh, please, then go ahead.
Yeah, actually, well, since we are kind of starting, I would like to ask if somebody would like to tell something. Yeah, if actually. No, we of course, Alvaro was fully, he agreed and he was, this was the question, you know? So, well, we of course supply all the information about the structure, about the ideas of Interpore chapter. If anyone would like to tell something, well then, let us.
Meetings to EAG meetings. I have been to EAG meetings and a few others, and the ones I like best are the Interpore meetings. That's what I can say.
Well, yeah, of course, I would like to invite everybody to the Interpore meeting, which will help in Padova, but I think I will repeat it again tomorrow at the end of the conference. So, but Anyway, next year in May there will be a meeting in Padova. Padova is a beautiful city, less than an hour from Venice and from Verona, so everybody is very welcome to participate. Well, thank you. So now we go for a cocktail, and cocktail is in that coffee room where we had the coffee. So please.